Should I be destitute of feeling if I was not deeply affected by the strong proof which my fellow citizens have given me of their confidence in calling me to the high office whose functions I am about to assume, as the expression of their good opinion of my conduct of the public service? I derive it from the gratification which those who are conscious of having done it all they could have done to merit it can alone feel. My sensibility is increased by a just estimate of the importance of the trust and the nature and extent of its duties, with the proper discharge of which the highest interests of which great and free people are intimately connected. Consciousness of my own deficiency cannot enter on these duties without great anxiety for the result. From a just responsibility I will never shrink, calculating with confidence that in my best efforts to promote the public welfare my motives will always be duly appreciated, and my conduct be viewed with that candor and indulgence which I have experienced in other stations. In commencing the duties of Chief Executive Office, it has been the practice of distinguished men who have gone before me to explain the principles which would have governed them in their respective administrations. In following their venture of example, my attention is naturally drawn to the great causes which have contributed in principal degree to produce the present happy condition of the United States. They will best explain the nature of our duties and shed much light on the policy which ought to be pursued in the future. From the commencement of revolution to the present day, almost 40 years have elapsed, and from establishment of the Constitution 28 through this whole term, the government has been what may emphatically be called self-government. And what has been the effect? To whatever object we turn our attention, whether it relates to our foreign or domestic concerns, we find abundant cause to felicitate ourselves in the excellence of our institutions. During a period fraught with our difficulties and marked by very extraordinary events, the United States have flourished beyond example. Their citizens individually have been happy, and the nations prosperous. Under this Constitution, our commerce has been wisely regulated with foreign nations, and between states, new states have been admitted into our Union. Our territory has been enlarged by fair and honorable treaty, and with great advantage to the original states, the states respectively protected by national government under a mild parental system against foreign dangers, and enjoying within their separate spheres by a wise partition of power, just a proportion of the sovereignty, have improved their police, extended their settlements, and attained a strength and maturity which are the best proofs of wholesome laws well administrated. And if we look to the condition of individuals, what a proud spectacle does it exhibit! On whom has oppression fallen in any quarter of our Union? Who has deprived any right of a person or property? Who restrained from offering his vows in a mode which he prefers to the divine right author of his being? It is well known that all of these blessings have been enjoyed in their fullest extent, and I add with particular satisfaction that there has been no example of a capital punishment being inflicted on anyone for the crime of high treason. Some might admit that the capacity of our government to these beneficent duties might doubt in trials which put to the test its strength and efficiency as member of the great community of nations. Here, too, experience has afforded us most satisfactory proof in its favor. Just as this Constitution was put into action, several as the principal states of Europe become much agitated and Just as this constitution was put into action, several of the principal states of Europe had become much agitated, and some of them seriously convulsed. Destructive wars ensued, which have late only been terminated. In course of these conflicts, the states received great jury from several of parties. It was their interest to stand aloof from contest, to demand justice from the party committing the injury, and cultivate by a fair and honorable conduct the friendship of all. War became at length inevitable, 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 and the result has shown that our government is equal to that, the greatest of trials under the most unfavorable circumstances, of the virtue of the people that speak, and the heroic exploits of the army, the navy, and the militia. I need not speak. Such, then, is the happy government under which we live, a government adequate to every purpose for which the social compact is formed, a government elective in all its branches, under which every citizen may be by his merit obtain the highest trust recognized by the Constitution, which contains within no cause for discord, none to put at variance one portion of the community with another, a government which protects every citizen in the full enjoyment of his rights, and is able to protect the nation against injustice from foreign powers. Other considerations of the highest importance admonish us to cherish our Union and cling to the government which supports it. Fortunate as we are in our political institutions, we have not been less in other circumstances on which our prosperity and happiness essentially depend. Situated within the temperate zone, and extending through many degrees of latitude along the Atlantic, the United States enjoy all varieties of climate, and every production indicate that portion of the globe, penetrating internally to great lakes beyond the source of great rivers which communicate through our whole interior. No country was ever happier with the respect of its domain. Blessed, too, with its fertile soil, our produce has been very abundant, leaving even in the years least favorable a surplus for the wants of our fellow men in other countries. Such is our peculiar facility that nothing is not part of our Union that is not particularly interested in preserving it. A great agricultural interest of the nation prospers under its protection. Local interests are not less fostered by it. Our fellow citizens of the local engaged in navigation find great encouragement in being made by the favored carriers of the vast productions of the other portions of the United States, while the inhabitants of these are amply recompensated in their turn by the nursery for the seamen in the naval force, and thus formed and reared up for the support of our common rights. Our manufacturers find a generous encouragement by the policy which patronizes domestic industry and surplus of our produce, a steady and profitable market by local wants in a less favored parts at home. Such, then, being a highly favored condition of our country, it is interested of every citizen to maintain it. What are dangers which menace us? If any exist, they ought to be ascertained and guarded against. In explaining my sentiments on this subject, it may be asked, what raised us to be the present happy state? How did we accomplish the revolution? How remedy the defects of the first instrument of our Union? By infusing it into the national government sufficient power for national forces, without impairing just the rights of the states or affecting those individuals. How sustained past glory through the late war? The government has been in the hands of the people, to the people, therefore, and to the faithful and the dispensaries of their trust is their credit due. Had the people of the United States been educated in different principles, had they been less intelligent, less independent, or less virtuous, can it be believed that we should have maintained the same steady, consistent carrier, been blessed with the same success? While then, continuing body retains its present sound and healthful state, everything will be safe. They will choose competent and corrupt. When they degenerate into a populace, that they are incapable of exercising the sovereignty. Uncertain is the easy attainment, and the usurper soon found. The people themselves become the unwilling instruments of their own disbandment and ruin. Let us, then, look to the great cause and endeavor to preserve in a full force. Let us, by all wise and constitutional measures, promote intelligence among the people as the best means of preserving our liberties. Dangers from abroad are not less deriving of attention, experience, than the fortitude fortune of other nations. The United States may be again involved in war. It may, and it may in that event be the object of the adverse party to overset our government, to break our union, and demolish us as a nation. Our distance from Europe and the just, moderate, and specific policy of our government may form some security against these dangers, but they ought to be anticipation guarded against. Maybe if our citizens are engaged in commerce and navigation, all of them are in a certain degree dependent on their prosperous state. Many are engaged in their fisheries. These are interests are exposed in invasion and the wars between other powers. We should disregard the faithful we should disregard the faithful and admission of experience if we did not expect it. We must support our rights or lose our character, and with it, perhaps our liberties. A person who fails to do it can scarcely be said to hold a place among independent nations. National honor is a national property of the highest value. The sentiment in mind of every citizen is a national strength that ought therefore be cherished. To secure us against these dangers, our coast inland should be fortified, our army, our navy regulated upon just principles, the force of each kept in perfect order, our militia be placed in the best practicable footing, to put our excessive coast in the state of defense, to secure our cities and interior from all invasion that will be attended with expense, but when finished will be permanent. And it is fair to presume that a single campaign of invasion by naval force superior with our own, aided by a few thousand land troops, would expose us to greater expense, without taking into estimate of the loss of prosperity and distress our citizens that would be insufficient for this great work. Our land and naval forces should be moderate but adequate to the necessary purposes. The former to garrison and preserve our fortifications and to meet the first invasions of a foreign foe, and while constituting the elements of a greater force to preserve the science as well as the necessary implements of war in a state to be brought into activity in the event of war. The latter, retained within the limits proper in the state's peace, might aid in maintaining the neutrality of the United States with dignity in the wars of other powers and saving the property and their citizens from spoliation. In the time of war, with the enlargement of which the great naval resources of the country render is insusceptible, and which should be duly fostered in time of peace, it would contribute essentially both as a luxury of defense, and as a powerful engine of annoyance, to diminish the calamities of war and to bring war as a speedy, honorable termination. But it ought always to be held preeminently in view that its safely of these states and of everything dear free people must depend on, in an eminent degree, on Mitilia. Invasions may be made too formidable to be resisted by any land and naval force which it would commort either with the principles of our government or the circumstances of the United States to maintain. In such cases, resources must be had to the great body of people, and in the manner to produce the best effect. It is the highest importance, therefore, that it may be so organized and trained as to be prepared for any emergency. The arrangement should be such to put the command of the government, the ardent patriotism, the youthful vigor of this country. If formed on equal and just principles, it cannot be oppressive. It is the crisis which makes the pressure, and not the laws which provide remedy for it. This arrangement should be formed, too, in times of peace, to be better prepared for war. With such an organization, of which such a people of the United States have been nothing to dread for foreign invasion, its approach in an overwhelming force of gallant men might always be put into motion. Other interests of high importance will claim attention, among which the improvement of our country by roads and canals, proceeding always with a constitutional sanction, holds a distinguished place. By thus facilitating the intercourse between the states, we shall add much to convenience and comfort of our fellow citizens, much to the ornament of our country. What is of greater importance? We shall shorten distances, and by making each part more accessible, and dependent on the other, we shall bind the Union more closely together. Nature has done so much for us by intersecting the country with so many great rivers, bays, and lakes, approaching the distant points so near to each other, that the inducement to complete the work seems so peculiarly strong. A more interesting spectacle was perhaps never seen than exhibited within the limits of the United States, a territory so vast and advantageously situated, containing objects so grand, so useful, so happily connected in all their parts. Our manufacturers will likewise require a systematic and fostering care of the government, possessing as we do all raw materials, the fruit of our own soil industry, we ought not to depend in the degree we have not done on supplies from other countries. We are thus dependent. The sudden event of war, unsought and unexpected, we cannot fail to plunge us into the most serious difficulties. It is important, too, that the capital which nourishes our manufacturers should be domestic, as it influence in that case, instead of exhausting as it may do in foreign hands, it would be felt advantageously on agriculture and every other branch of industry. Equally important is to provide at market home for raw material, as by extending the competition it will enhance the price and protect the cultivator against casualties incident to foreign market. With the Indian tribes, it is our duty to cultivate friendly relations, and act with kindness and liberty in all of our transactions. Equally prosper is to preserve in our efforts to extend them to the advantage of civilization. the greater amount of our revenue in the flourishing state of the treasury are the full proof of the competency of the national resource for any emergency, as they are the willingness of our fellow citizens to bear the burdens which the public necessities require. The vast amount my God. The vast amount of vacant lands, the value which daily arguments form additional resource of great extent and duration. These resources, besides accomplishing every other necessary purpose, put it completely in power of the United States to discharge the national debt at an early period. Peace is the best time for improvement and preparation of every kind. It is the peace that our commerce flourishes the most, that taxes are most easily paid, and that revenue is most productive. The executive is charged officially in the departments under the Departments of Public Money. It is responsible for the faithful application of the purposes of the United States. The legislator is the watchful guardian of the public purse. It is the duty to see that the disbursement has been honestly made, to keep the requisites of the responsibility every facility should be afforded to the executive to give public agents in case public money strictly promptly to get in back out. Nothing should be presumed against them, but if, with the consent public money is suffered to lie along uselessly against, they will not be the only defaulters, nor will demoralize king again. It will, if it it will and an administration which will be felt by the whole community. I shall do what I can to secure the economy and fidelity which is important branch of the administration. I doubt not the legislator will perform its duty to equal zeal throughout examination should the sure be made, and I will promote it. It is particularly gratifying to me to enter on the discharge of these duties from the time the United States are blessed with peace. It is the states the most consistent with their prosperity and happiness. It will be my sincere desire to preserve it. So far it depends on the executive, on just principles, with all nations claiming on nothing unreasonable and again. Equally gratifying is to witness the increased harmony again and again. Discord does not guard our system. A union is recommended as well as by the free and basic principles of our government. Extending his blessings to every individual by the expending against and again. The American people have been encouraged The American people have been encouraged together great. The American people have been encouraged together great dangers and sustained severe trials with success. They constitute one great family with a common interest. Experience has enlightened us on some questions of essential importance to the country. The process has been slow, dictated by just a reflection and faithful regard to every interest connected with it. To promote this harmony in accord with the principles of our Republican government in a manner to give them the most complete effect in advance to all other respects and interests of our Union. It will be the object of my constant and zealous exertions. Never did government commerce under the auspices so favorable, nor ever was success so complete. If we look into the history of other nations, ancient or modern, we find no example of growth so rapid, so gigantic, a people so prosperous and happy, so complimenting that we have to, so prosperous and happy that we have to, so prosperous and happy. In complimenting what we have still to perform, the heart of every citizen must expand with joy when he reflects how near our government has approached to perfection. That in respect we have no essential improvement to make. That the great object is to preserve it in the essential principles and features which characterize it, and that is to be done by preserving the virtue and enlightening the minds of the people, and as in security against foreign dangers to adopt such as arrangements are indispensable to the support of our independence, our rights, and our liberties persevere. In the career in which we have advanced so far in the path already traced, we cannot fail, under the favor of a gracious providence, attain in high destiny which seem to await us. In the administrations of the illustrious men who have preceded me in the high station. With some whom I have been connected with by closest tie from early life, examples are presented which will always be found highly instructive and useful to their successors. From these I shall endeavor to derive